the air with breaking news on Wall Street, just closing out its worst day in 2 years with a new inflation report out showing costs are up and paychecks are down. But almost at the same time, President Biden says he's doing the right thing to help the economy, celebrating the Inflation Reduction Act, even bringing out a rock and roll Hall of Famer to make his point. What today's numbers mean for a key Federal Reserve meeting next week and for your budget at home. Plus, an emotional night in London as the body of Queen Elizabeth II is just now returning to Buckingham Palace, and a rare glimpse at a raw moment for King Charles as he balances duty and grief. Plus, Elon Musk, now one step closer to owning Twitter, whether he likes it or not. And he doesn't, as a whistleblower is telling lawmakers the site causes real harm to real people. And the owner of the Phoenix Suns getting a 1-year suspension after a new investigation laying out his inappropriate conduct at work. What we're hearing today from Robert Sarver and the NBA about these allegations. Plus, the power of representation on display in the new Little Mermaid movie. How Halle Bailey's portrayal of Ariel is opening up a bigger conversation. We've got that talker of a story later on in the show. Hey, I'm Hallie, and tonight we're getting this split screen on the economy, where in the last hour, President Biden says he's doing the right thing. But markets are closing with their worst day since June of 2020, all because of this new inflation report, showing just about nothing you need to live is getting any cheaper, and the money you earn just can't keep up. You've got the Dow down nearly 4%, the S&P more than 4%, NASDAQ more than 5%, with that sell-off probably driven by this concern that a week from now, Fed Chair Jerome Powell will look at these pretty ugly Labor Department numbers and get super aggressive on interest rate hikes. So what did this inflation report really show? Costs ticked up by 0.1% since last month. So things are 8.3% higher than last year, meaning inflation, yes, it is stubborn. In dollars and cents, what does that mean? Check out a typical trip to the grocery store. Last August, a gallon of milk, a dozen eggs, and a loaf of bread combined cost $6.73. Today, it's more than $9 just for these 3 staple foods, stuff you probably buy every week. And a lot of Americans are feeling that pinch.
You can't hardly afford food. I mean, it's gone crazy. Even a drink is like $2 and something.
The big trend here, it's not just the stuff you want that costs a lot, it's the stuff you need. Rent is up the most it's been since Oprah made her TV debut back in 1986. The electric bill, the biggest jump since 1981 when the first space shuttles took off. And health insurance, that's up nearly 25%. I can't even give you a comparison historically for that because it's never happened before. It's never been that much, right? So even though you may be making more money, it feels like it is worth less because you're paying more for all of this stuff. So with this as the entire backdrop, you might be asking, so how is it that inflation isn't even worse? Well, gas prices, they've been dropping for 13 weeks straight. 3 months ago today, we were over $5 a gallon. Today, just $3.70 on average. And that's enough for the president to take almost kind of like a sort of victory lap, even bringing out James Taylor, that Grammy Award winner, to celebrate Democrats' Inflation Reduction Act.
In the end, every single Republican voted against this historic law. So it fell to the Democrats to meet this moment and deliver for the American people. And that's exactly what we did.
We'll talk about the president's message on that broader climate and health care spending bill with Kelly O'Donnell in just a second. But I want to start with NBC's Stephanie Ruhle. So, Steph, help us understand this, right? Why is it that the markets, we talked about the numbers on the Dow, the NASDAQ, S&P, et cetera. Why is it that the markets seem so surprised by this inflation report?
Not necessarily surprised, but sort of the realization is sinking in that inflation isn't going anywhere, not anytime soon. So what has the Fed done so far? Because that's the only real tool we have to fight inflation. They've raised rates. And the thought was when they raise rates, we're going to start to see prices level off or even drop in a big way. That hasn't happened in a significant way yet. Now, they're not continuing to skyrocket, but they're stubborn. That's a really good word that you used earlier. They're stubborn. So that most likely means that the Fed will continue to raise rates. That's the tool they have. And when the Fed raises rates, what does that do? It makes things more expensive to borrow. Where does that impact the markets? Well, if you're a major business, you're borrowing all day long. It costs more money for you to run your business. And the big difficult thing for the Fed is how do I slow the economy in raising rates, but not slow it so much that I tip us into recession? And we've had the benefit of having strong wages and a very strong labor market up until now. That's the cushion. But the fact that inflation continues to stick around, it means this thing is difficult. Not that the president's wrong in running the victory lap on IRA, but it means we have a complicated economy.
You said the word that I think speaks so much to this moment that we're in economically, which is complicated, right? Because as you are fond of telling me and our viewers and our listeners, the markets are not the economy, right? Investors and what they do is not the economy. Inflation is not the economy, but it's all pieces of the bigger puzzle. And the New York Times is out with this interesting chart showing that even parts of the economy that have been good are starting to be a little bit more on the edge. Earnings growth, consumer spending, job openings, as you've talked about. What should the takeaway for people be? How should we be feeling and how should we be thinking about the Fed's meeting next week?
Okay, but those things are expected, right? Earnings growth, when it costs more money for you to run your business, that's going to impact your business. The fact that you're seeing consumer spending go down, that's the idea, right? The economy was so hot. Demand was up there. We're spending. And when we're spending, we're pushing prices higher. So while these aren't good headlines, wait, consumer spending's down. We wanted consumer spending to slightly cool in order to cool the economy. The same thing in the housing market. People are suddenly saying, wait a minute, it sounds like housing prices are going down. Well, Hallie, 6 months ago, you and I were in these same seats saying you cannot afford to buy a house out there. How can we cool the housing market a little? What this is a complicated economy. In a country with so many people that are in so many different economic buckets, there's not one answer. We're going through a difficult cycle coming out of a pandemic, dealing with a war. It is not easy.
Stephanie Ruhle, it's great to have you leading off the show tonight. Thank you, Steph. Appreciate it. Let's go to Kelly O'Donnell now at the White House. So, Kel, for all those reasons, right, that Steph and I just talked about, it feels like President Biden is walking this kind of tightrope here along with the White House, right? On the one hand, looking at this inflation report, I'm sure they'd like to see slightly different numbers, right? On the other hand, wanting to celebrate a bill that the president and Democrat worked hard to get into law.
Exactly. In some ways, there's a lot of pressure on a White House to live in the moment and to be responsive to what Americans are feeling today and to react to the news events of the moment, the inflation numbers that came out today, the experiences that people feel when they go to the grocery store or they're paying bills at home. And at the same time, they also want to look at the work that they have really been doing for the entire time the president's been in office and really a longer period than that when you consider some of the Democratic priorities. So I asked Karine Jean-Pierre, our press secretary here today, about sort of the kind of conflict that you might find when Americans are experiencing this pain on the store shelves and in their wallets and some frustration perhaps for those that have 401ks and seeing the market today and a big party on the South Lawn. And part of what she responded to is that these are long-term goals of the Democratic Party and President Biden to try to achieve some aims that are a part of the Inflation Reduction Act that they think will, over time, reduce costs for Americans. Not all of it rolls out immediately. There are some benefits to Americans who do things in the climate space, where if you buy certain energy-efficient products, there are some rebates. There are things in the healthcare space where you will see a reduction in the cost of getting healthcare on the exchanges under Obamacare. For seniors, there will be a reduction in the cost of prescriptions. So there are things that will reduce costs for Americans. It's not something that's like flipping a switch. And there are policy objectives that this administration believes are in line with big long-term goals. So they consider it worth celebrating. And so they're going to do that and have that moment, as we saw play out with hundreds of people on the South Lawn and some fire and rain from James Taylor.
Little James, and you got a friend in me, I heard, was played as well by the illustrious artist, if you will. You know, what's interesting here is the president also, as he sort of praised Democrats, also went after Republicans for, he says, doing nothing on inflation. And when you look at polling numbers and approval ratings, people think he is doing better on the economy. It's still underwater at 40% rather, but that is up something like 7 points from back in May. It feels, Kelly, and you help me understand this based on your sourced reporting here, that the White House feels like going on offense on this could actually work in their favor.
They have had sort of a constellation of some events that have worked in the president's favor, and they want to build on that. And they believe, especially this close to the midterms, that more fiery rhetoric and working to try to make the argument that the policies are the right ones under their view of how government should work, that that's the right way to go. And they also believe that that will be reflected in how Americans view this president. So he has had some really hard days when it comes to polling and has had some improvement. A little bit of positive improvement is definitely something that this White House wants to tout. To get some momentum working toward the midterms is what they're looking for. And we're seeing the president become more engaged politically. And then when you have legislative achievements, and there have been a number of them, some have been purely Democrats only. This was one of them, using the reconciliation tool where they only needed Democrats' votes. And then there have been some where they've been able to get Republicans on board as well. So they're doing whatever they can to try to get Democrats' attention, to keep them motivated and get them to turn out. And they're trying to make an argument that this isn't just a referendum on the sitting president and the party in power, but a choice between two different governing philosophies. And that's not always what you see in a midterm election time. It's often just a referendum. They're trying to make it more of a choice. Hallie?
Smart analysis. Kelly O'Donnell, as always, appreciate it. Appreciate you. Thanks for being with us. We're going to keep up this conversation on the economy later in the show to talk about how some folks now need to use buy now, pay later programs for their groceries. That's a little bit later. Over to London now, because in just the last few hours, Queen Elizabeth's coffin officially arrived at Buckingham Palace. An emotional moment as she was received by her son, King Charles, and the rest of the members of the royal family. You can see here, this was really a powerful moment. The hearse approaching, driving through the gates. There were tons of people there. There was this moment where everybody cheered. And even bigger crowds are expected for her lying in state, with the public set to have access to her coffin 24 hours a day. All of it after a busy day for the King and Queen Consort, Camilla, as they toured Northern Ireland. This is them outside meeting people near the royal residence there. The King also talking with members of the Northern Ireland Assembly. His message today, that he's committed to helping all people in that part of the UK. Lindsay Reiser is joining us now. And Lindsay, it is obviously very late to where you are in London for us, but people already have started lining up to be able to, in person, pay their respects to the Queen in front of her coffin there. They still have a ways to go. The viewing only starts tomorrow afternoon. Talk about what we can expect to see, what it's like in London right now as they get ready for this.
Hallie, the devotion is real. The Queen, so beloved here that even in the wind and the rain and the cold, people are waiting not only to see Her Majesty's coffin enter Buckingham Palace for the last time, but also to stake their claim as we expect that procession, the very solemn procession, to happen tomorrow when Her Majesty's coffin will be transported from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Hall, where it will lie in state. Hallie, this is one of the largest security undertakings in London history. Anecdotally, there are barricades everywhere. We saw behind us in the River Thames a police boat that we were told is not normally there patrolling. There are going to be as many police officers in this city as there were during the London Olympics. We're talking 10,000 officers, every police officer in the force. Uniformed, also plainclothes officers, uniformed unarmed officers called bobbies scattered throughout the crowd to help reassure people. And it certainly is going to be an enormous spectacle, Hallie, where we are expecting people to be lining up and waiting in that line for hours, Hallie.
There has been such an interesting, I think, public-private dichotomy here, because obviously saying goodbye to a queen is such a public process and event, and there are hundreds of thousands of people who want to pay their respects. But for a family in mourning, right, there is also this very private component. You saw it as the Queen's hearse pulled into Buckingham there, like the people outside, right, but then the private moments inside. You saw another, I think, interesting example of this during this moment where when the King was in Northern Ireland, he got kind of irritated with a pen as he was signing a condolence book. I want to play a little bit of this. I think people may have seen this. Watch.
Oh, God, I hate this.
No, it's going over the work. So nobody got trouble.
This pen explodes all over his hands, and people go, well, what's the newsworthiness? Why show that? And I do feel like it speaks to this very relatable moment. He is the king now. Also, he's a son whose mom just died. And that is impossibly hard, right? And there are so many emotions that come with that.
Hallie, on one hand, we have this stoic royal family enshrouded in mystery and intrigue, and it's really one of the appeals of the royal family here and across the world. But then, exactly as you mentioned, on the other hand, there's this real personal appeal. And King Charles has been preparing for this moment his entire life. He was only 3 when he became the heir. But at the same time, he is a son who is grieving the loss of his mother. And we have seen these moments of profound emotion. For example, the king showing emotion on His Majesty's face when Parliament was singing God Save the King. The national anthem had just changed from God Save the Queen. And not only the grief component, Hallie, but he has enormous shoes to fill. His mother, Her Majesty, is incredibly beloved here. He doesn't enjoy the same kind of popularity. Of course, people right now are welcoming him into this new era, but he does have some challenges that he faces as he moves the monarchy into a new modern era, Hallie.
Lindsay Reiser live for us there in the UK, in London. Lindsay, thank you so much for being with us. I know we'll be talking to you in the days to come. Appreciate it. We want to turn to some breaking news back here at home on the investigation into former President Trump, with some new stuff that we are just finding out about, really in the last hour, not even. The Justice Department is now telling the judge who approved the search at Mar-a-Lago they want to unseal more of the search warrant affidavit, basically the reason behind why the Fed said they needed to go to Mr. Trump's home, where they found hundreds of classified documents. I want to bring in Tom Winter here. So basically, Tom, in super plain English, the DOJ is saying, we will tell the public more than what we previously have told them. Why and what's new that we're finding out tonight?
Right. So it's 9 paragraphs in part or in full that have been unredacted. The judge agreeing with the Justice Department, unredacting them, as you said, Hallie, within the last hour or so. What the Justice Department said is, look, we've already talked about some of this stuff in the ongoing special master litigation. In other words, how these documents are going to be processed, how the search warrant materials that were seized are going to be looked at by the Justice Department. There's that ongoing fight I know you've talked a lot about, but this has now come up in the course of the search warrant, the initial search warrant that we filed in this case. We already got permission from the judge to unseal certain portions of it for that special master litigation. Now, can we just unseal the same portions in the search warrant affidavit? And they've been able to do so. Just a few key points. One, got some new information as far as what was handed over in an envelope later on in the process by Trump's own attorneys, specifically that some of the documents, I believe approximately 17, were labeled top secret. Some came from FISA, that's the very sensitive electronic surveillance of foreign nationals. Some came from information that might be tied to human sources overseas that were provided for the U.S. intelligence community. Another thing that we learned is that the assertions from Trump's attorneys as far as what was handed over and not handed over, they say came from what they were specifically told. Now, they don't say who told them that they had handed over all the documents, but they are relying on whoever told them that. Another key component to it, Hallie, is that in their assertions, they said, look, we've looked through the entire property. The only place where these documents that you all are looking for could be found is in this basement storage room at Mar-a-Lago. And now, according to the Justice Department and what we've been reporting for weeks, Hallie, is that there was not an insignificant amount of material that was found in the former president's own personal office. So there appears to be some pretty stark differences and contradictions between what Trump's attorneys told the Justice Department and what they ultimately found.
Tom Winter, thank you for that new reporting for us tonight. Appreciate it. Also in D.C., the verdicts for 3 men facing multiple criminal charges for what they did on January 6th. They're rolling in right as we came on the air after a 2-week trial, a bench trial, right? That means it wasn't a jury, but a judge deciding their fate. All of them were found guilty of assaulting, resisting, and impeding certain officers, but some of them were found not guilty on other counts. Now, why is this important, right? Why does this matter more than just as like a tally of which January 6th defendants are found guilty? Because so far, federal prosecutors have been able to get guilty verdicts on every charge against every defendant when they go to trial with a jury. Okay, this was not a jury trial. This was a bench trial. Might this mean now that more defendants could choose to go that route for a better shot at maybe getting a lesser sentence? It comes as we're hearing about the January 6th committee's next step in its investigation after a 4-hour closed-door retreat. Committee Chair Benny Thompson talking about that parallel investigation and a possible September 28th hearing that we've been reporting on. Here's what he said.
We're still in the process of talking. The goal is the 28th. That's the window. If it happens, it will be that day, but we're not sure at this point.
Ryan Riley is joining us now. So, Ryan, let me start with these verdicts coming in for these 3 January 6th defendants. And again, I know this, I was literally trying to read some of it because it just got sent as I was in the tee-up of the intro to you here. The big question had been, this is a judge, by the way, who is the only judge who has acquitted any January 6th defendant, right? So the thinking had been, hey, if any judge is going to find one of these people not guilty, it's probably going to be this judge. What happened, right? Do they all have guilty verdicts now? Why is that significant, and how does this play into the bigger picture?
Sure. So you initially hear some of these charges and you hear, the assaulting, resisting, or impeding charge, and then you hear the obstruction of an official proceeding charge. Your mind might automatically think, oh, the assault charge is actually kind of the bigger one here. But in reality, in terms of criminal exposure, in terms of your sentencing, the obstruction of an official proceeding charge is critically important. And that's one that has been used against a number of defendants here. And in this case, he actually found 2 of the defendants not guilty of that obstruction of an official proceeding charge. He found one of them, and that's the individual who is actually in those transition lenses, you'll notice, and he has the shield. And viewers might remember him pressing a D.C. police officer who's screaming in pain up against one of the doors in the tunnel on January 6th. That defendant was convicted of that obstruction charge and was actually taken into custody immediately after the hearing. The judge said essentially that he didn't trust him based on the testimony that he gave. But there was these 2 not guilty verdicts in these obstruction cases, which has a significant impact on the investigation and might lead more defendants to take that gamble at trial potentially if they can't get a plea deal that they like, Hallie.
Well, and that's an interesting point here, Ryan, that the last thing you said here, right? Then perhaps more defendants, because they can choose to do a bench or a jury trial, right?
That's right. Yes.
So perhaps we may see more of them choosing a bench trial because of what seems to be, I don't want to call it a mixed bag, because, again, they're all guilty on some kind of account, but it's mixed as far as the seriousness and the level of what they were found guilty or not guilty on.
That's right, and a lot of this is sort of luck of the draw on the judges. I think these defendants got a judge who is sort of, has made political comparisons and said, why isn't DOJ going more aggressively against other folks, in other areas? So I think that they've gotten certainly a judge who is at least sympathetic to some of their claims, and they would say, I think some of the defendants would be more likely to give them a fair shake. But overall, I would still classify it as a win, although it doesn't give them the same exposure without the obstruction of justice charges, guilty for 2 of the defendants. That doesn't give them the same exposure that they would otherwise had this gone to a jury trial potentially, and we see a different verdict there, Hallie.
Ryan Riley, thank you so much. Also breaking right before we walked into the studio tonight, Ken Starr, who led the Whitewater investigation into former President Bill Clinton, has died at the age of 76. Apparently, it was from complications from surgery, according to his family. Whitewater started as an investigation into the President and First Lady Hillary Clinton, then President Clinton, of course, but branched out into other areas, including the Monica Lewinsky scandal that eventually led to the former president's impeachment. Joining me now is Ken Delaney. And Ken, again, this is developing as we're coming on the air. He was an important political figure, obviously, in Washington, particularly when it came to, of course, the height of the Clinton impeachment trial. Help us understand what he meant to people in Washington and his legacy.
Yeah, Hallie, before Whitewater, Starr had a long and mostly anonymous career as a conservative judge and lawyer, nominated by former President Ronald Reagan for a seat on the U.S. Court of Appeals in the Washington, D.C. Circuit, and serving as U.S. Solicitor General under then-President George H.W. Bush. And Starr actually argued 36 cases before the Supreme Court. But he is, of course, best known for leading the special investigation, the special counsel investigation into Whitewater, that catch-all name for a sprawling set of inquiries that began as a probe of real estate investments by then President Clinton and First Lady Hillary Clinton. It later branched out to encompass a number of other areas. The most notorious of those involved the president's extramarital affair with Monica Lewinsky, which started when she was a 24-year-old White House intern. We'll recall that Clinton falsely denied the relationship under oath in a civil deposition, was impeached by the Republican-controlled House on perjury and obstruction of justice charges, but acquitted by the Senate. Starr was a sixth-generation Texan. He served as president of Baylor University from 2010 to 2016. He was actually removed from that role after a sex assault scandal involving the football team erupted on his watch. And as you said, 2 years ago, Starr was a member of former President Donald Trump's defense team in Trump's impeachment trial in the Senate. And as we all recall, Trump was acquitted in that proceeding, but a consequential figure over really multiple generations in Washington, Hallie.
Ken Delaney, and thank you for bringing us that developing news. Appreciate it. Just a few hours ago, a majority of Twitter's shareholders voted to approve Elon Musk's $44 billion deal to buy the company, a deal that Elon Musk is trying to back out of. So this means that regardless, Musk and Twitter are heading to trial next month to figure out whether the world's richest man actually has to go through with buying the social media company. One thing happening today that'll probably come up then, whistleblower Peter Zatko's testimony in front of the Senate today about Twitter, he says, allegedly misleading regulators about its lack of cybersecurity defenses. The company's former head of security telling lawmakers thousands of employees at the company have enough access to tweet as other users, even government officials, although he hasn't seen it happen at that level. Listen to this.
It's not far-fetched to say that an employee inside the company could take over the accounts of all of the senators in this room.
Twitter responding to the hearing today, saying that it confirms, in their view, that Zatko's allegations are riddled with inconsistencies and inaccuracies. Eamon Javers is joining us now. So, Eamon, let me start with Zatko talking to the committee about Twitter, saying that the company creates real harm to real people. I'm not a senator. You're not a senator. The vast majority of Twitter users are not members of the Senate. What is the impact on them, right? Like, what is the concern here for the average Joe who's on Twitter?
Well, look, nobody wants foreign spies sliding into your DMs, Hallie, and that's sort of what he's talking about here. He's saying that Twitter is running such a loose shop internally that thousands of engineers inside the company have access to all this back-end data. Foreign intelligence services are exploiting that to their advantage, gleefully sucking up all that data that Twitter has on people around the world. And, of course, for average individuals, you know, the company has so much information on those of us who use Twitter, including our DMs, but also everybody that we're in contact with, our whole network, to map out the relationships and personal information like your cell phone number, what kind of browser you're using, where you might be at any given moment. All of that, Zatko suggesting here, could be at risk. This was a very tough hearing, you've got to say, for Twitter. Take a listen to this exchange with Zatko and Senator Blumenthal of Connecticut.
Would you agree with me that Twitter has put its users' health and safety severely at risk?
Yes, sir.
And it's put the national security severely at risk?
Yes, sir.
And that's why you heard that sharp response from Twitter that you just read on the air, Hallie. I mean, this is a company that feels like it's being subjected to all these false narratives. They say this is inaccurate, this is unfair, but the day really belonged to Mudge, as he's known, the hacker turned security consultant with the nickname of Mudge, testifying today and capturing everyone's attention.
What does Mudge want to get out of this? What's the end game for him here?
You know, he said today, Hallie, that he loves Twitter. He thinks the company has an important role to play. He wants it to tighten up its security. And he really feels like, he said, you know, the company's just prioritizing profits over security. It's just dealing with the next big crisis in real time. And they just never get to these back-end security problems because they're never front of mind for a company that's desperately trying to build market share, to build audience size, and to make money. And he's trying to call attention to that and force the company to deal with this. We'll see whether it does under its current ownership, or if Elon Musk takes over, whether he'll apply some of his billions of dollars to solving some of these problems that Mudge outlined today.
If Elon Musk takes over, it will be incredibly begrudgingly because he doesn't want to do this deal. We talked about this trial.
Buyer's remorse.
Right, exactly. The trial's going to go forward in October, whether Musk likes it or not, right? Like, this is, the train is out of the station at this point. And these two pieces of news here today, the shareholder vote and Mudge, Zatko's testimony here, it all is kind of the backdrop to what we're going to see next month at this trial, right? Like, it all kind of shapes this whole thing that we're going to see.
Yeah, remember what Elon Musk did was earlier this year, he said, I'll take over Twitter. I'm going to bid $54.20 a share for the company. That seemed like a great deal to him at the time. Well, you know, not so much. Twitter's share price collapsed. It's down to $41 and change today. Now he's vastly overpaying for this company, wants to get out of that deal, and it's going to cause him all these headaches politically in terms of all the social issues. He doesn't want to do it anymore. Now he's latching on to what Mudge was saying on Capitol Hill today and saying, aha, look, Twitter did something wrong here in the acquisition process. They've lied to people, therefore I should be out of this deal. Not clear that that's going to work. We might have a situation here where Elon Musk has to take over Twitter and doesn't want to have anything to do with it at the end of the day.
Eamon Javers, it is a fascinating story of our time. I'm glad you're on it. It's good to see you, friend. Thank you. Earlier today, the U.S. saying it should come as no surprise that Ukrainian troops have seen such a dramatic turnaround, managing to push Russian troops back in the northeast part of the country. The Pentagon saying if anybody's surprised by this, it was probably just Russia. It comes as Ukraine today says something like 150,000 people have now been liberated, they say. And they're backing up some of these claims with video, showing their army tearing down Russian flags, celebrating burned tanks. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky saying they freed the equivalent of about 2,300 square miles. And if you're wondering how big that is, their defense ministry tweeted out this point that that's about more than the area of the state of Delaware, which is the home state, of course, of President Biden. Megan Fitzgerald is joining us now. And Megan, the overwhelming sort of feeling around Ukraine over the last 72 plus hours has been that it has made some significant strides. The question is it enough to turn the tide here? And what does this mean for Russian morale?
Yeah, that's exactly the question that everyone wants to know. Is this a turning point in the war, or is this just a momentum shift? And we've been talking to government officials here in Ukraine. Of course, Ukraine believes in their country. They believe that this is a change in the tide. They believe that they're going to win this war. And so, you know, you take a look at what they've been able to do within the last 2 weeks, as you mentioned, liberating 150,000 people, taking back, you know, more than 2,300 square miles of land just within the last couple of days. Officials are saying that they were able to liberate another 300 villages and settlements in the northern part of the country. This is a war that still goes on. You know, in the southern part of the region, in the Kherson part of the country, this is where they started that counterattack. There's fierce fighting at this hour, but all eyes are focused on the northeastern part, in the Kharkiv section of this country, because this is where we saw the Russians flee. This is what the Ukrainian officials are saying. And then we talked to some military experts who say, look, we know this because of what we see that was left behind. You've got fresh artillery and tanks that are just sitting there. It certainly doesn't suggest a redeployment, as the Russians are talking about. You asked about morale. You know, I mean, there's reports that the Russians don't even really understand what they're fighting for. So they have low morale. But you compare that to what the Ukrainians are doing here. They're fighting for everything. Everything is on the line. They are fighting for their families. They're fighting for their future. They're fighting for their identity, Hallie.
Megan Fitzgerald live for us there in Kyiv. Megan, thank you so much. It's important reporting that you're doing from the country. We appreciate it. Coming up here on the show, the USDA says ground beef and some of these HelloFresh meal kits may have been contaminated with E. coli. What else the company is saying? Plus, some good news maybe for new parents. Scientists say they've figured out the precise calculation to get your baby to fall asleep the fastest way. What is it? We'll tell you coming up in the 5 Things. One of the most powerful people in sports being punished by the NBA today. We're talking about Robert Sarver, the owner of the Phoenix Suns and the WNBA's Phoenix Mercury, getting suspended for a year and fined $10 million. Why? An investigation apparently found racist and sexist workplace misconduct. Sarver allegedly used a racial slur and said a bunch of other things that you really just shouldn't say at work. The NBA says Sarver used the N-word when recounting what other people had said. He's said to have yelled and cursed at employees and made multiple sex-related comments at work. The league started investigating Sarver in November after an article published by ESPN today. Sarver says he takes issue with some aspects of this NBA report, but is still apologizing. In a statement, he says good leadership requires accountability. I want to bring in Kathy Park. And this was, Kathy, an extensive report, right? Something like 300 plus employees ended up doing interviews with investigators about what it was like inside the organization. The NBA says the Suns cooperated with this. Tell us more about what we know.
Yeah, hundreds of staff were interviewed, 80,000 documents and materials. But, Hallie, this really snowballed, as you mentioned, when ESPN initially came out with a report November of last year. That is when, and shortly after that, a New York-based law firm was commissioned by the NBA to look into Sarver's allegations. And in that probe, several things surfaced. And you mentioned some of them. He was accused of using the N-word on multiple occasions. inappropriate language when talking about women, also accused of bullying as well. So today, with this news breaking, Sarver did issue a statement, apologize to those people who might have been offended by his actions. He owned up to these transgressions, and he said, looking ahead, he is going to be accepting the consequences moving forward.
NBA Commissioner Adam Silver in a statement said, and I want to quote here and show people what he said, that the conduct described in this investigation is troubling and disappointing. He says, we believe the outcome is the right one. This $10 million fine, by the way, that's the max allowed under league rules here. Based on your reporting, what is the message that people think this sends to other owners, to other leagues?
Yeah, so Hallie, in addition to the $10 million, he's going to be suspended for a year, so you won't be seeing him around for quite some time when it comes to events, games, activities tied to the WNBA as well as the NBA. But as far as that message goes, you know, this is getting a lot of traction on social media, and a lot of people have different things to say, but they're saying, look, this was just a one-year suspension. And another name that's being tossed around now, you might remember Donald Sterling back in 2014. He also was caught making racist comments. Well, he also had to pay a hefty fine. However, he was banned for life from the game. So they're saying, look, just a one-year suspension just isn't enough. Hallie?
Kathy Park, live for us there out west. Kathy, thank you very much for that. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, a jury in Chicago has now officially begun deliberating today in the child porn and obstruction of justice trial for R. Kelly. In the last few weeks, jurors have heard from multiple women who allege Kelly had sex with them when they were minors. Kelly's lawyer argued the government's witnesses were not credible. Now remember, Kelly is already serving 30 years in prison after he was found guilty last year in New York of federal racketeering and sex trafficking. Number 2, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham today introducing a bill to ban abortions nationwide after 15 weeks. There seems to be, at the moment, zero chance, basically, that it could pass the Democrat-controlled Congress. It comes just a few months after the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade and weeks before the midterm elections, of course, just 55 days away now. Number 3, Pope Francis arriving in the former Soviet Republic Kazakhstan earlier today. At a meeting with the country's president, he pushed for an end to what he called the senseless and tragic war in Ukraine. The Pope will be in Kazakhstan for a couple of days, joining a big gathering of international faith leaders. Number 4, U.S. health officials warn ground beef that came in some HelloFresh meal kits in July may have E. coli. The department's telling anybody who maybe has that meat in their freezer to throw it out. Food safety officials think it could be connected to multiple E. coli infections. A HelloFresh spokesperson said the USDA alert came out of an abundance of caution in their view, and that it's working with the government and the meat supplier on this. Number 5, researchers in Japan say they've finally come up with an exact, precise formula to get a crying baby to go to sleep. In a study published today, they say the trick is to carry the crying baby in your arms for exactly 5 minutes, then sit with the baby in your arms for exactly 8 minutes before then putting the baby into bed, where presumably they shall sleep peacefully and give you a break. New parents, try this out. I'm real curious to see how this goes. Where was this news 2.5 years ago when my kid was 6 weeks old? When we come back, Alex Jones back on trial with another jury set to decide how much he has to pay families of some Sandy Hook victims because of his lies about the massacre. We've got the details after a break. Today, a jury began hearing evidence to determine how much conspiracy theorist Alex Jones should pay a former FBI agent and the family members of Sandy Hook school shooting victims for saying the massacre was a hoax. And if you're sitting here and you're wondering how is it that Alex Jones is back on trial yet again, here's why. You might remember all those headlines from just a month ago. Conspiracy theorist Alex Jones ordered by a Texas court to pay one Sandy Hook shooting victim's family nearly $50 million. He plans to appeal, so why is he on trial again? This time, a Connecticut court is taking on a new case to determine how much money Jones should pay different plaintiffs who say Jones's lies about Sandy Hook led to their families being harassed.
The challenge is showing not just that the plaintiffs were harmed, but that they were harmed directly as a result of what Jones said.
In 2013, just months after 20 children and 6 adults were massacred in Newtown, Connecticut, Jones started mocking the Sandy Hook families on his show.
But, the Newtown kids,
For years, Jones kept up the lies, spreading conspiracy theories like that the shooting was synthetic, a false flag, or that the victims' family members were crisis actors.
It's fake!
Obviously, none of it's true, with Sandy Hook families already living a nightmare, compelled to push back.
Jesse was real. I am a real mom.
Furious and fed up, 18 of those Sandy Hook families in Texas and Connecticut sued Jones in 2018, saying he caused emotional and psychological harm. The families say when Jones talked about Sandy Hook, he boosted his audience and raked in more profits. In 2021, 2 judges found Jones liable for defamation. So now in this trial, it's not about whether Jones lied. He's convicted of that. It's about how much money each family should get because of it.
When it's only about damages and the jury already knows that he's been found liable, they're going to tee off on this person that caused so much emotional pain to these families and other plaintiffs.
I want to bring in now NBC's Ron Allen, who is following the start of this trial for us, with that as the context and the backdrop. So, Ron, bring us up to speed, because I understand an FBI agent testified today basically saying a colleague spent like 90% of her time after the attack dealing with concerns about the harassment of people who live in Newtown, death threats, prank calls, etc.
Yes, he's one of the plaintiffs in this case, and it was very emotional. We also heard from a family member who lost a sister who was one of the teachers at the school. And that's the point of what we've been hearing so far. A lot of emotion from the families and plaintiffs about the impact of just not just losing their children, but also of this campaign that went on for year after year by Alex Jones and his followers, which was a campaign to try and just destroy these families, they said. And remember, this was Jones cast this as a plot. He said that the Sandy Hook event was staged by the government because the government wanted to tighten gun control laws and that they were going to come and take people's guns next. So it was a very emotional thing that went on for a very long time. At one point when the FBI agent was testifying, he got very emotional. Here's some of what he had to say and directed some of his comments at Jones. Take a listen.
Their children got slaughtered. I saw it myself. And now they have to sit here and listen to me say this. And these people made millions upon millions upon millions. They destroyed everybody. They don't give a damn.
And that's the point of this now. How much will Jones be liable for? And the numbers could get up into the millions, the tens of millions, and there's no cap in Connecticut on some of the damages that he's going to be held responsible for.
Jones was not in court today, just like in the last trial. He was, in fact, on his show, criticizing the trial. He was asking for financial support. What's also interesting is that his business model, how much money he makes, is coming into play in some of this discussion. Explain that.
Well, there's going to be a lot of testimony, and the opening arguments by the plaintiff's family focus to some extent on the metrics. How many viewers, how many listeners did Jones get while he was talking about Sandy Hook? They say a lot, millions. They say that he earned billions of dollars, millions of dollars by selling supplements and collective coins and other things, all tied to his comments about Sandy Hook, and they say they can measure it. Now, remember, the reason that these judges have found him liable without a trial is because Jones didn't provide information. He didn't respond to court directives to provide evidence of his business affairs and so on and so forth. That's why he was found liable, and the families now are really trying to tee into that to say that he has millions of dollars, and the plaintiff's attorney said that this should be at the end of the day that he should be shut down, and that's the kind of language they use. They want to shut him down so that he can't do this again.
Ron Allen, thank you for keeping us up to speed on the start of that trial. We appreciate it. Coming up here on the show, health officials say they've confirmed the first monkeypox death in this country. I'll tell you where and what else you should know next in the local. Plus, you might have seen the option to buy now, pay later on stuff like concert tickets or things that are expensive. But what about like stuff that you just need to live, like your milk? We're hearing from people who say they've used this and need to for food. Stay with us. NBC News covers hundreds of stories every single day, and because you could not possibly read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. From our West Coast Bureau, the LA County Health Department has confirmed the first person in this country has died from monkeypox. The department said whoever this person was had been hospitalized and was very immunocompromised. We really don't know many other details. Health officials in Texas are also investigating the death of somebody there who had monkeypox. From our Midwest Bureau, a library in a suburb south of Chicago says it canceled a drag bingo event for teens because alleged threats were made against it. This thing was supposed to happen next month, and so many people wanted to go, there was a wait list. In a statement, the library said the program would have several rounds of bingo, plus a, quote, age-appropriate lip sync of Katy Perry's Firework. The library says officials are investigating the threats. Out of our Northeast Bureau, a surprise from Cardi B at her former middle school in the Bronx today. Look at this. She's announcing a $100,000 donation to the school. Can you imagine? You're just like in gym class, and here comes Cardi. The Grammy Award-winning artist talked to students about her experience in the New York City public school system, the importance of education. Amazing that she is giving back in such a big way. So listen, did we hit you with a bunch of bad inflation news at the top of the show? Yes, we did. Food is costing more. That's not on us. That's just the facts. Don't shoot the messenger. But the bottom line is the fact that things are getting so expensive means that people are having to get creative on how to get food on the table. Look at this. The price of chicken up 30 cents a pound. I feel that. Rice up 14 cents a pound. Fruits and vegetables as much as 20 cents a pound. So some folks are turning to buy now, pay later services that let people pay for groceries in 4 interest-free installments. Right? So you don't owe interest. You can pay in sort of 4 buckets, but there are catches. If you miss a payment, you get hit with a late fee. Maybe it dings your credit, et cetera. Shaq Brewster is covering this story for us live in Chicago. And Shaq, I feel like I see that little box pop up, and I know about it for stuff like concert tickets, right? Or like a piece of exercise equipment or whatever. But for groceries, this feels like kind of a different and new frontier.
Exactly, and that's what experts and economists are talking about, in that there's a shift in how people are using these buy now, pay later programs. You mentioned they're popular for things like concert tickets, for Pelotons, even trips. You see them pop up when you're booking on those online sites, but more and more you're seeing people use them to pay for their grocery bill. And you went through some of the advantages that they feel. The fact that they're interest-free payments that you're using. There's some flexible options into how you pay for that growing bill, as you talked about earlier today in the inflation numbers. But they do carry that risk in that people are still taking debt. They're essentially financing and using financing options to pay for food. I want you to listen to some of the conversations I've been having with 2 moms. This will just be one mom, Tanya, who has leaned into this. She's been relying on this. But listen to how her use of these programs has evolved over the year.
I was able to buy more snacks for the kids, more extravagant things that I wouldn't normally have been able to buy. The problem was that it, added up. It got to the point where I couldn't afford groceries and I couldn't afford my payments.
You keep hearing that pattern where it started with something that you weren't really needing, and now it's something that you do need. It's groceries, and they're stuck in this cycle where they're using these programs to pay for something that's not discretionary.
These companies are basically offering a line of credit with no credit check. Are they doing anything wrong, or are they just trying to help out, or how does this work on that end?
Look, you talk to experts and economists, and they say the regulations haven't caught up to what's being offered here. Many of these companies are advertising no credit check. Usually they run a soft credit inquiry, so it won't hurt your credit score, but they're advertising and they're targeting these services at people who have bad credit scores. Companies are saying that these are young folks, millennials, Gen Z. The customers skew towards women. So they're not doing anything wrong at this point, but this is definitely new territory, and the federal government hasn't caught up in terms of the regulations compared to credit cards and banks.
Shaq Brewster live for us there outside the grocery store in Chicago. Shaq, thank you for that. Still to come, a new Ariel is about to be part of our world. The teaser trailer getting some sweet reactions from the littlest fans. We're going to show you a few of them and talk about why the new Little Mermaid is striking such a chord. So there is a story tonight that has, it seems, everyone talking and a few people crying. Parents posting TikTok videos online of their Black daughters' reactions to the new teaser trailer for Disney's live-action Little Mermaid movie. And if you're wondering why, take a look.
That is Ariel.
Is her as the real her? I think she's brown. Brown Ariel is cute. She's black.
Can you even? I mean, that little girl saying, Brown Ariel is cute. It just gets you. The actress playing her is 22-year-old Hallie Bailey, a huge role for her, and she's tweeting about all these video reactions, saying she is in awe, talking about how much it means to her. Disney just released this trailer the other day, but it is starting a bigger conversation about how important representation is in kids' movies. I want to bring in now Callan Rosenblatt, and it is so, I lurk on TikTok, and, it has been on my FYP, right? These reactions from kids who are like, wait a second, Ariel looks like me. It means so much. And there has been pushback to what I would characterize as maybe like a kind of a yucky minority of people who are criticizing the fact that there is a black Ariel out there, right? Talk about some of the reaction online to this.
Yeah, Hallie, I mean, first of all, I can't watch those videos without getting choked up myself.
I know.
I mean, the response is so beautiful. And of course, just like Lord of the Rings or Star Wars or Game of Thrones earlier this year, there is going to be, this unfortunate racist pushback. But I think what's really important here is, one, there are plenty of people pushing back on those racists and reminding them, Ariel is a fictional character. She can be any race or any color that, we determine she is. And I think the thing that's really beating out all those negative voices are these gorgeous videos of these children who are so in awe and so, blown away by seeing themselves in this Disney character. I mean, you could look at the caption that one mother put up for her video, just saying, look at this, look at this video and look at how my child is reacting. It's such a beautiful moment. And I think, one TikToker put it best, Ariel is black now. That's who she is. That is Ariel.
From a strictly business perspective, too, setting aside how personally amazing it is, I think, to see these girls seeing somebody who looks like them on screen, there's a lot of buzz, right? I mean, again, Ariel's going viral. Everybody's talking about The Little Mermaid, mostly, obviously, in this incredibly positive way, which I think Disney would have to appreciate.
Absolutely. I think Disney has a hit on their hands. I mean, people are talking about this trailer creating buzz, and like you said, it's mostly this positive reaction to it. So I think Disney is going to have a hit on its hands, no matter what the film critically turns out to be. I think people can't wait to go see this movie.
Callan Rosenblatt bringing us the latest on what is going big online, and this for sure is. Thank you, Callan. Good to see you. That does it for us for this hour. We will have more for you here tomorrow, same time, same place, as always. Thanks for being with us. Coverage picks up right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.